Hi, I'm Cassie, and this is the start of another reading vlog. I just love reading vlogs so much. Like, I love watching them. I love doing them. They're probably my favorite thing. I don't know. I just really like it. So I recently posted a list of books that I wanted to read this year that I meant to read last year and never got around to. So this is a reading vlog that includes those and a couple of other random things. So let's get into it. Here are the books. I love a little stack moment, especially when the stack's not too big, because when it's too big, it hurts me. First up, we have The Weight of Blood, and I've talked about this one before, but it is a retelling of Carrie. I really like this author. I've only read one thing by her, and I did have some issues with it, but I really liked her writing, so I'm very much looking forward to this. I love Stephen King, as you may have been able to tell by the shelf behind me, and I love Carrie, so I'm really excited for this. It's a YA retelling. I don't know if I just said that, but it is YA, so it's a little bit different, but I honestly feel like the original Carrie isn't anything that couldn't not be YA. That was not the most articulate I've ever been. The next one I'm going to be reading for this vlog is Daisy Darker. This is going to be my first Alice Feeney book, and I've heard a lot of different things about her other books, like I think the Rock, Paper, Scissors, is it? I don't know. The one with trees on the cover? That's white mostly? People didn't seem to like that one, so I don't know. I've heard a couple of people say this one was really good. I actually saw it on a few people's like best of lists, so I'm looking forward to it. This is sort of like an Agatha Christie and then there were none retelling, I think, or like in the same vein as that. I could be confusing this with something else and now I'm second guessing myself, but no, okay, I just looked inside the book. Yes, this one is about a family who's assembling on an island with their Nana or whatever for like her super old birthday party, and then one by one people start dying. So it is definitely inspired by or a retelling of the Agatha Christie book, and I've heard that it's pretty good. I don't know how big or how twisty it'll be, but I liked the original. Like, I liked that Agatha Christie book, so it's pretty basic, but I liked it. So we'll see. And then I'm gonna be reading House of Hunger, which, well, shine. And this is about like vampires and like blood maidens and a main character who moves into somebody's house to be that vampire lady's blood maiden, I think. Yeah. So that sounds like a lot of stuff I would like. I'm very much looking forward to this. It is horror. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure what the big like bad thing is or like what the high stakes bit of this will be, but we're gonna see. This is my first book by the author as well, although I think although they did write The Year of the Witching, which is on my TBR, but I don't own it. So, got this from the library, and we're gonna go into it. This was sent to me in November, I believe, from the publisher, so thank you again to them. And I have been looking forward to this one because the cover is so, so pretty. This is about a woman who was part of a sex cult in the past, and I think she escapes it, but ends up having to come back because her sister or her friend or somebody is still involved, and they're either in danger or they're dead. Yeah. As you can tell, I don't like going into things knowing too much about them. I like being surprised. So we're gonna see my real reactions while I'm reading. I do know that this one is not just cults, but it is, again, a sex cult. So that can sometimes be like a hard line for people. So I do want to mention it just in case. Obviously, I'm not gonna be talking about anything too severe here, but yeah. And then the last thing I'm going to be reading for this vlog is The Resting Place. And this is by an author who I read another book by and I did not really like it. It was called The Lost Village, and there's just sometimes when people use like mental health things in horror and thrillers, I usually just don't vibe with it. It's just not for me. I don't like that. So that's a personal thing. Had nothing to do with the writing. So I'm going to go into this one with high hopes, and yeah. This is about a person who has face blindness, I believe. And so when they look at people, they like don't remember what their face looks like, I guess. And they witnessed somebody's murder, like their grandmother or their mother or something, and they can't remember even though they saw the person that did it. So I believe there's gonna be a twist in here, so I almost included this in a different vlog, but it's due soon, so I'm just gonna get it out of here. All right, so that is it for the books that I'm gonna be talking about and reading. That was awkward. That's it for the books I'm gonna be reading in this vlog. As per usual, I will check back in with you once I've started the first book. Bye. No, not bye. See you soon. Hello. So I thought I would check in because I am like 100 pages into this one right now, and I did not realize how closely this would follow Carrie. Although there is a huge difference, and it's that instead of just being like a weird little girl who gets her period, everybody dislikes the main character because they find out that she's actually half black. And so this one has a lot of racial things, like racial commentary on society, and how kids treat other kids. And basically the main character, Maddie, she lives with her father, and her mother died, and she lives her life in fear of her father and of the rest of the town finding out that she is not white. And up until the beginning of the book, she has passed as white, so everybody has thought that she was white. And then she checks the weather really closely every day to make sure that it's not going to rain or be too humid, because her hair will no longer be straightened. It will like get poofy, she says, and then everybody will be able to tell. So early in the book, she gets caught in a thunderstorm while she's in gym class, and it goes how she was worried that it would go. Like, it's pretty awful, honestly. The kids are assholes. It's rough so far, just in terms of like how mean everybody is and how racist, and even the characters who are supposed to be like, you can tell, like there's one main character and she's dating one of the only black guys at the school because they're all in high school. They mention that it's only like 30% black students versus the white students, and the main character is not popular, but there is a group of popular kids and they're mostly white. There's only like one black kid that hangs out with them, and it's really strange seeing his perspective, because this doesn't only show Maddie's perspective, and it's really strange seeing that character's, because he kind of has to internalize all of these feelings and the discomfort that he feels when they make these comments. And then you also have all the popular white kids who are basically looking to him like, it's okay if we say this racist stuff, right? Because you're our black friend and you say it's okay. So yeah, it's tough so far. I am really liking it, but some parts of it just have me like sitting there like, did they really say that? Like, oh my God. Like, in terms of the characters, not the author, but the characters, like, yikes. There's also a podcast element to this. So there's like interviews and little news articles and a conversation between two people doing a podcast. And I think that's cool because this is like a bunch of different perspectives at once instead of just Maddie's, and having that sort of thing where it's not just like the perspective from the person who's doing all the stuff and getting all the bad treatment. We're also getting into the minds of the other kids as well. It's very interesting. So yeah, I'm liking it so far. I am going to continue. I will probably finish it today because I'm getting through it really quickly. I've only been reading for like half an hour and I'm like almost 100 pages in. So I do read pretty quickly as well, but like I'm just flying through because some of the pages again are told in like interview and article form. So it's a bit quicker than if it was like all written out as a normal novel. So yeah, I will probably check back in right after I finish it. See you then. Hey, so it is a couple of hours later and I finished this one, and I am about 50 pages into this one, so I thought I would check in. This was really good. I gave it 4.5, maybe 4.75 stars. It is a little bit from being a 5, and that was just because there were a couple of writing choices that pulled me out of the story a little bit, and that was just like with phrasing of things. Like there were a lot of times where a certain character, instead of like she said or she like screamed or like that, it was like she cheered, and it was just back to back, like hello she cheered and what's going on she cheered, and I don't know, that was weird to me. I know I mentioned this before, but just to go a little bit more into this, it had a lot of really important things to say about racism, especially casual racism or like quiet racism, as it says in the book, and how insidious and toxic those things can be. Usually when somebody thinks of a racist person, they can often think of somebody who's like extremely like outwardly intolerant or mean or crude, and that's not always the case. Like there are a lot of people who are very racist who you wouldn't think, and who only kind of start showing those beliefs and behaviors when they feel like they're backed into a corner. And so this showed a lot of teens and adults both that felt like they were being backed into corners and reacted in really poor ways. Not just that, but just bullies in general who weren't backed into any corner, who were just in positions of privilege and felt the need to kick other people down. There were some really hard things in this. There was something toward the end that made me cry. I loved how similar this was and how closely it followed like the actual inspiration, Carrie. It was so cool to see like Maddie and Carrie were so similar, but I honestly really love Maddie, and I don't think I feel that way about Carrie herself. I feel bad for Carrie, but for Maddie, I feel terrible, but also I'm just like, damn girl, like yes, like I don't know, there were so many moments where I was kind of like cheering, and I don't know if I was supposed to be because they were pretty brutal. Yeah, there was just a lot of really good revenge stuff in here that maybe would bother some people, but I loved it and I was on board for it. I really liked how this one ended, and I will say that I liked this one way more than I liked White Smoke, so this is probably so far my favorite by the author. I would highly recommend this one. This one's also really fun because there were like a bunch of nods to Stephen King books and like characters from his like little universe. And you can really tell that the author is a fan of Stephen King and his works. And then in the author's note, the acknowledgements at the end, she actually thanks him for being like such an inspiration. So I thought that was really cool. There was a character called Jackie Torrance, and there were just a couple of other things too. So like if you're a fan of Stephen King and you're familiar with like some of the stuff he's written in his other books, I think you will probably pick up on a few of the nods. I do also want to mention that although this is YA, it is so gory. Like there's so much blood, and there are like decapitations and stuff. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but there are very gory scenes, and it's just like abrupt and only mentioned in passing, so it's like, whoa, holy graphic heck, and then moving on, which I really liked. But if you're not big on gore or blood, just a little warning for you that towards the end it gets very rough. I will also say, just for the racism in general, like there's some stuff in here that is really rough, and that's coming from me. I can't imagine, like, I think this is such an important book because it's probably like some of these situations might be like very eye-opening for people who don't view themselves and their familial beliefs and the things that they've been taught as inherently racist when they are. So hopefully this will challenge some people's opinions and maybe open their eyes to certain things, but yeah. And then so I'm also about 50 pages into Daisy Darker, and so far I'm not loving it. It's kind of boring. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep reading it. I feel like there's gonna be something that happens pretty soon that'll pick it up, but honestly, like, I don't know if you can see behind me, I have Dreamlight Valley like staring me in the face, and I just want to play video games, and I'm kind of not in the mood to read. This is putting me in a little bit of like a mood for reading. This is supposed to be like horror thriller in vibe, but so far it's just a bunch of dysfunctional family drama that seems like it's, I don't know, it really feels like a Wes Anderson film or something to me so far, which is fine for what that is, but I don't go into a Wes Anderson film expecting horror or thriller vibes, so yeah, I don't know. It's all right. The writing isn't really doing much for me so far. The characters aren't really doing much for me. The Nana character, like the grandmother, I do like her. She seems very quirky and weird. I like that about her. Like so far, okay, so I don't remember how much of this I explained, but so far we're following the main character, Daisy Darker, and the Darker family, and they are all convening together after not seeing each other for a long time on the grandmother's 80th birthday. And they're meeting up, they're having this reunion on an island where the house is that they all grew up and that the grandmother has owned, and that's been passed down in their family to like the matriarchs or two women for generations. And she's going to be dying soon, they all assume, so she's going to be revealing her will and telling them what they're getting from her. And they kind of, a lot of them really just want stuff from her. Like, they want her money, they're not really good people, they have secrets. Daisy so far is the only one that really likes her grandmother. There is a younger girl as well that I believe likes her grandmother, because she seems to like everybody. She's just a teenager. She's one of the other characters' daughters. So there's that. And they're really the only characters that I like, just because everybody else is just so not fun to read about so far. I do know that people are going to start dying. And judging from where I am, like at the beginning of each chapter, they have a timestamp on the night before Halloween, which Halloween is the grandmother's birthday. So it's October 30th, and right now I think I'm at like 9:45 p.m. So this isn't really a spoiler, but it tells you in the synopsis that the grandmother dies at midnight. So I'm waiting for that to happen, and I feel like once that happens, maybe other stuff will start happening. But right now it's just, I don't know, I'm like 50, 60 pages in, and I'm just like, I don't really care about this family. No offense. Like, they all kind of suck, and I don't know. Yeah. I ended up reading these in this order because I found out after I finished The Weight of Blood that it was the highest rated of the stack that I'm doing for this vlog. And then when I ordered them, this was the next highest rated. So I figured I would like this one, but if I'm not liking this one and it's the second most highly rated, I'm a little bit worried about where the rest of this is gonna go. So fingers crossed. I will check in when something either blows my mind or I finish the book. Good morning. So it is like 6:30 in the morning, and I read this in a single sitting last night, so I didn't have a chance to update last night before I went to bed. But I don't remember what the last thing I said about this book was. I'm pretty sure that I was bored and I didn't like any of the characters. You are not supposed to like any of the characters, and the ending, I was not expecting the ending. I almost DNF'd this. Like, at least 200 pages in, I was still bored, and I was not interested at all. I guess there's something to be said about the fact that if you have to read for over 200 pages before you get to something interesting, maybe it's not a very good book, but the interesting things blew my mind, and I was not expecting them. I didn't guess the twist or the end in this, so yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I spent most of this not wanting to read it, and then when I finished it, it had 4 stars. Yeah. So take that as you will. I'm probably going to have some coffee and then do a little bit of work on my computer and then go back to reading. So yeah, I'll check in after that. Okay, so it has been 24 hours and I haven't read anything else for the vlog. I finished Daisy Darker and I liked it a lot. I did not expect the twist. And then yesterday I realized that Daisy Jones and the Six had come out with the first 3 episodes this month, and I am like a few days behind. It's on Amazon Prime and it's like a show adaptation, so I've been really excited to watch that, and I've been meaning to reread Daisy Jones and the Six before that came out. Did not get to it. I completely forgot when it was coming out. So when I realized that the first 3 episodes were out, I decided I had to reread the book right away. So I basically just sat down for a few hours yesterday and read all of Daisy Jones and the Six for the second time. That was not a part of this reading vlog, and it's not a part of any reading vlog, so now I'm behind. So for today, I've been reading this one, and I just finished it. I meant to do a check-in in between, but forgot. This is also the second book for this vlog that I did not like until like 200 pages in, when stuff started to actually happen. So I don't know what's going on so far. This is the second book by the author that I've read. The first one was called The Lost Village, and I did not like that one. But I did like the writing, so I decided to give the author a second chance, and I'm glad I did because I did like this one. Although again, for the first like 150 to 200 pages, I was not super sold. The main character in this is very annoying, and I didn't like her at all. Like, she just kept making really stupid decisions and doing very stupid things that I did not like. But there was like an overall murder mystery and some kind of secrets that needed to be unveiled, and I was interested in figuring out what those were. So I did keep reading, and I ended up giving this 4 stars, but I will say again that I just hated the main character. So it was more just her personality too, because she would just do things that did not make sense or react in ways that did not seem believable. She's supposed to have like a condition that is basically face blindness, so she doesn't recognize people, and she walks in on her grandmother being killed, and then she doesn't know who did it because she can't recognize them. But there are some things that I think that the author kind of just let slide for this, because I feel like other things like smells and stuff would come into play, and things like not recognizing an entire vehicle doesn't really have anything to do with face blindness. So not understanding that this is a certain person's car and not realizing that, even though you've been seeing this person and know what their car is for 8 years, like, there were just some things in it that, honestly, the more I talk about it, I think I might lower this to a 3.5. Overall, it wasn't bad. I don't know if I'm gonna keep reading books from this author, because so far I just haven't like super been wowed by any of them. I know that they are translated, so I don't know if there's maybe just something lost in translation that just isn't working for me, but I do think this is one that you could probably read in any setting, but it would be better if it were cold outside, because it's kind of like snowy and there's a snowstorm. And also, if you like gothic horror vibes, you might like this one, because it's like, it takes place in a dark mansion. There are like some family secrets and things like that going on. There is a wildly flipping time span. Like, there's a dual perspective, and so you go back in time reading a younger girl's diary for part of the book, and those are a little bit jarring, especially because it doesn't really explain to you what's happening until later. But I wasn't really pulled out of the book for it. I did see it mentioned in a bunch of the reviews, so it might bother some people. Just as another note too, there were a lot of V names in this. Like, every girl character's name started with a V, like Veronica and Victoria, and it was just a lot, and I started getting a little bit confused, especially early on when you're trying to figure out who the characters are and there are so many of them. You don't want all of their names beginning with the same letter. It's just confusing and weird. And I get that they're like family, so maybe it was just a thing in the family, but it's never even addressed or mentioned, like, that the mother intentionally all gave them these names. So I don't understand why they had to have them, especially considering the ending. Anyway, so yeah, I think 3, maybe 3.5 stars for this one, and I'm going to be reading, and then I'm going to be starting on the next one for this vlog. I have these 2 left, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to read first. Probably this one, because I'm a little bit more excited for it, I think. I think this one also might be a little bit slower, and I'm not in the mood for something slow, considering the last 2 books were very slow for the first 200 pages. I will try to remember to check in the middle of this, but no promises, because I am very bad at that apparently. I just sit down and start reading, and then I'm done. And that's it. So unless I take a break, I don't remember to film in between, so I'm gonna try. Hello. Okay, so just wanted to check in. I recognize that I have not been the best about vlogging while I'm reading, and I was talking to my boyfriend about it because I don't know why I'm so bad at it. I'm just not good. And he told me that I just like completely devour my books when I'm reading them. So I don't even really look up. Like, I don't usually eat or anything. Like, I will just sit down for a few hours and just like finish a book start to finish. And like, there are times where like there's a twist or something, and I think, oh, maybe I should check in, but I want to know what happens next so bad, so I don't want to stop reading to pull out my phone and then record. So yeah, I'm doing my best. I thought I would check in and just share kind of like a little bit more in depth about my thoughts and the books that I've read so far, because I did both start and finish this one today since my last update. I'm sorry. This is a learning process for me. I will get better at it, but practice makes perfect, I guess. And right now I kind of suck. Okay, so we're going a little bit back, and there were a couple of things I wanted to say about this. And they are that I really liked the grandmother here, and it's very cute that I stopped this vlog and started reading this one right after I finished this one. I didn't even realize until I was almost finished with Daisy Jones, which is a reread, by the way, but that they both have Daisy in them. Like the main characters are called Daisy, and Daisy's in the title, and I didn't even realize. Like I wasn't even thinking about it. So that's how observant I am as a person. So I've thought a bit more about this one, and I don't remember if I gave it a 4 or 4.5 before, but I think I am going to solidly move it up to a 4.5 because I started it and I didn't really like it, and it was a little bit slower than I anticipated, but there were so many quirky things that have kind of been in my head since a couple of days ago when I finished this, like stuff about the house and the stuff about the grandmother, just little things, and it was really atmospheric, and I did like that. So the more I think about this one, I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I don't remember what I gave it up till now. And this one, unfortunately, the more I think about it, the less I think I like it. So like, I do still like it more than the other book I read by this author, but I don't know. The more I think about it, the more things are just kind of really convenient here, and I don't know if there was like maybe something lost in translation, but I feel like some of the characters' choices and some of the dialogue and stuff felt really, really silly. And silly is not really a vibe you kind of want in your thrillers or mysteries. Like, sometimes it can be appropriate, like if it's like a cozy mystery and it's fun, but like if it's intending to take itself seriously, as this one I think is, it's not really that great. Okay, and then that brings me to this one, The Last Housewife. Again, I did read this entire thing since the last time I checked in, and whoops, there was a point where I was going to check in actually with you all, and I stopped reading so I can go get my boyfriend from work, but then when I got home, I just wanted to start immediately again, and so I did, and I just love reading, okay? So this comes second to my love of reading. Hopefully people like that and can understand that it's because I love reading so much that I'm forgetting to check in, and not for lack of trying, or not for lack of trying or like a desire to do it or anything like that. Yeah. Okay, so in The Last Housewife, we are following our main character, Shay, and there's kind of like a dual timeline because she's giving an interview to one of her friends who does a podcast about her past and her college life, because her friend from college, like her best friend from college, has recently killed herself, and it's been ruled a suicide, but she doesn't actually think that her friend Laurel would do that. So she's like, we have to investigate this. And the reason she even finds out about this is because she's listening to a podcast of another one of her friends as kind of like a, oh, I miss him and I want to hear his voice sort of thing, which I thought was cute. And she kind of enlists his help, and they end up getting entangled in this like secret society sex cult. And that's not a spoiler, that's all like in the synopsis, and it starts happening like pretty early on. I will say there is some content in here that's kind of graphic or dark. I read reviews that called this extremely disturbing, and I don't think that it was as disturbing as the reviews made it sound, but I do also know that we all have different levels of comfort and preferences, and that's okay. For me personally, I found Shay to be somewhat naive, but also pretty relatable. There was a point pretty early on where she tries to like enlist the help of the local police department, and I don't know what she thought, but it really gave me the vibe of like a 90s Christopher Pike heroine, because she just went in there with like nothing and was basically expecting all the cops to bend over backwards and want her help. It made no sense, and then when they understandably shot her down, she was mad and like, I can't believe they don't want to talk to me and hear about what I have to say from 8 years ago. It was just strange a little bit. That said, there were other parts that I did find very relatable. Again, Shay as a character is somebody who has darker leaning preferences, but she isn't sure if those preferences are a result of something that's happened to her or if it's something innate that she would have preferred anyway. And I think that's interesting. I think it's something interesting to reflect on and to kind of like focus on, especially for a main character to kind of like have these dark desires and not really know what to do with them. If you read this one and you really liked it and you didn't find it like too disturbing or too graphic or anything like that, I would also highly recommend Walking Through Needles. And there were parts of it that really, really reminded me of this. And I know that the author of that one's actually working on like a whole little series or line about women that have these kind of darker interests and preferences and tendencies. So if that's something that you're interested in reading about, definitely check that one out. I would recommend this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think there were a couple of things that were a little bit too convenient. Like, the main character got out of shenanigans very easily, and there were certain situations that I think should have been a little bit more difficult for her to get out of. And there was also another thing that I was kind of expecting to have with the podcast main character. A twist that I thought might be coming. Like, I expected it this whole book, and then I didn't get what I thought was going to happen. So I'm not removing any stars for that, but that was something that I think if that had been done, this would have been more impactful for me. Yeah. I don't want to say anything too specific or give any spoilers away, but if you can hear that, that's my dog walking around. There is a pretty big twist in this, like partway through, and it took me by surprise so much that I was like reeling, which I really liked. So just to be clear, that was something that made me give it a higher rating. But there was another thing that I thought was going to be a twist that didn't end up being a twist, and I think I would have given it even higher of a rating if that had happened. I know this is really vague, but I don't want to spoil anything. If you've read it and you want to talk about it, I'm totally down to do that. But yeah, 4.5 stars. I really liked this one. This makes me very excited to read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, because I still have that on my TBR and I've been looking forward to it for a while now. So the fact that I really liked this one so much is making me very hopeful for that. I've heard that some people actually prefer that one and didn't really like this one. Like, I think the ratings for that one are higher. So knowing me though, I do typically like things that are like considered darker and that people tend to give lower ratings because of the darkness. So yeah, we'll see. The last one I'm going to be reading for this is House of Hunger, and honestly, I'm kind of not in the mood to even read this because it seems like it might be like a little bit of a slower one, but I'm going to do it anyway for the sake of the vlog and the fact that I have kind of been shitty about updating thus far. Sorry again. I will do my very best to update before I finish this book completely. This one is under 300 pages, so I think it's one of the shorter ones I'm reading for this vlog, and hopefully that means it's not going to take me too long. I'm going to start it tonight, but it's already like 7:30, so I'm not sure how far I'm going to get into it. I do read pretty quickly, but as the night goes on, I get sleepy, and when I'm sleepy, I do not read as well because I start having to like repeat my lines that I'm reading and like read through the same paragraph like 4 times. So my brain and the absorption of words from books to my brain is not so good. About as good as I'm articulating the problem right now. But yeah, this one does have a really pretty color. I have to keep these tilted because the light is like right above me and reflecting off of it, but I don't know if you can see. She's got like this cool, she's got like a cool choker with like blood dripping from it, which again, it's like a high society sort of privilege maybe. I don't really know much about it, but I think it's very interesting that the theme of that sounds like kind of similar to some of the themes that were in this one, which I just finished. So yeah, I'm gonna see how they relate and if they're similar. And again, I will do my best to check in. I will see you when I'm halfway through this, or if my best intentions fail, I will see you after I finish the book. Let it be known that I remembered to check in halfway through this book. So I'm about 150 pages in, and so far it's a little bit slower than I would like. I can tell that there's going to be something, like some reveal. There's a mystery happening, but I don't know. So far it's just a little bit slow. So we're following our main character, and she is from like the South, which is like in this world there is the North and the South, and the North are all like aristocratic, fancy, rich people. And they all drink blood, or like bathe in blood, or put blood in their food, or you know, just weird stuff with blood, but they're not vampires. So I thought this was going to be a vampire book going into it, and they are not vampires. Unless that's something at the end that I just haven't gotten to yet, but as of this point, I was expecting vampires and I'm not getting it. So this main girl is from like working class, like very poor. She lives in a shack with her older brother who's like alcoholic, drug addicted, really abusive and mean. And she's also very gay. She likes women. She does not like other men. And she works for this old woman who's like kind of treats her like shit, and she doesn't have a lot. So when she sees an ad in the newspaper for a blood maid, she's interested. And there's like stigma surrounding being a blood maid. So when she tells her friend and when she tells her brother, both of them are like very against it, very negative. They do not treat her well. And so she knows that they don't want her to do it, but she decides to do it anyway because she's tired of living in this life that she has. So she goes and meets with this guy, and he tastes her blood, and he's like, whoa, you are exceptional. The lady's gonna love you. And honestly, like, that was the beginning for me of when I started getting this really weird pick-me energy from the main character, in which it reminded me a lot of being like 14 and reading Twilight, and experiencing Bella being like this coveted, amazing, incredible, beautiful girl that doesn't see her own beauty. And I don't know, it was just a little silly. This main girl comes from like very poor upbringing. She doesn't have any like training or any formal like skills or anything like that. But there's something in her blood that just makes her so important and special. So she gets taken immediately and becomes a blood maid for this countess. And the countess is honestly really cool. She's probably my favorite part of the book so far. She's like very kind of like creepy and evil, but also like sexy evil, so like alluring evil, and I like that. That's like a good vibe. So the girl gets to this like castle where these other blood maids live with this countess, and there's like a house mother, and she's telling her the rules, and they basically get bled every day, and the blood goes to the countess. So their whole job is basically to eat a lot of sweets and delicious things so their blood tastes good, and kind of lounge around the house all day and be available to bleed. And the countess is supposed to have like some kind of like blood issue, like she has a blood disorder. They don't specify what it is, and I don't know enough about medical stuff to know if it's like based on anything factual that exists, but it's because of this that she benefits from drinking other people's blood. So this is why she has blood maidens. And yeah, the north is split into like a bunch of different houses. So the house that the main character goes to is the House of Hunger, which is why the book is what it is. But then there's also like the House of Mist or House of Fog and House of Mirrors and like stuff like that. I think that's really interesting. But so far we're not getting information on these other houses or what makes them distinct from the House of Hunger, anything about like their backstories. So far we just have a lot of nothing. Like there's environment, there's mood, there's a lot of vibes and atmosphere, but I don't know, something's just missing for me so far. So I'm really hoping that this takes a turn and in these last 150 pages gets really, really good. Yeah, so far for me it's like a 2-star, I think. And it's not bad. I'm not going to say it's bad. The writing's fine. It's just, I don't know, some of the parts seem really convenient to me, and certain things just work out super easily, like in ways that it's just like, wow, she's chosen, wow, she's special, wow, what are the odds? Like, I don't know, it feels a little bit YA to me, I think, which isn't a bad thing, but this isn't supposed to be YA, so maybe it is not the best thing. Yeah, we're gonna finish the rest. This is the last book for the reading vlog, so I'm going to finish this right now. I had to stop myself from finishing it last night because I wanted to check in because I'm trying to be better. So this is me being better, and then I'm about to go binge the rest. We'll see. I'll check in after. Okay, so I'm back. I finished House of Hunger, and I think I'm going to be giving this a 3. I think a 3. My final rating is a little bit higher than it was the last time I checked in, but I had some issues with this. This still felt like YA by the end, although I will say it had like some smutty bits in it, like not very extreme or anything like that, but there was sex, and obviously that probably wouldn't have been in it if it were YA. That was the only thing that kept this from being completely young adult. Like, so a lot of the things I said before remain true. A lot of the ending, a lot of this felt so convenient. Like, it was like the author had an idea, and the idea was that there would be these houses, and I don't know if maybe the author was trying to go for, parts of it felt like it could have been like a big sprawling YA fantasy sort of thing, you know, like with these different houses and these politics and betrayal and folklore and stuff like that, but none of it was explained. None of it was investigated. It was just so briefly mentioned to what end? Like, there were so many things in here that I don't think needed to happen. There were things that didn't happen that I feel like they should have. Like, okay, I'm not gonna go into spoilers, but there was like a whole twist situation I was expecting from this, and I do mention it with spoiler tags on my Goodreads review, but it didn't happen. And it's fine, like sometimes you expect something and it doesn't happen, but I personally feel like what I expected to happen would have been so much better than what actually happened. Like, what actually happened did not seem to make sense. They spend all this time building up a specific character to be a certain way, and then they're basically at the end of it like, no, just kidding. I don't know. I can't, it's really difficult for me to say what my issues are without spoiling this, and I don't want to do that. So I guess I'll just say there were a lot of things I did not like, and I'm gonna give this a 3, but the more I think about it, it leans more toward maybe a 2.75. But because you can't do that on Goodreads, I'm gonna leave it as a 3 on there. I just feel like this is too convenient. Things worked out too well. I prefer a darker story. I prefer darker themes. And the thing is, this had dark themes, but it's like they didn't do anything with it. It's like you're handed all this good stuff, and then you just like drop it on the ground and watch it scatter, and you're like, cool, that's it. And like, I want to be really clear that that's not like an insult to the author. I'm not saying that the writing was bad or anything like that, but the plot itself just, it didn't do it for me. I think there were so many things that were almost there. There were so many things that I like in books that this had, but it just didn't do it. Like, it was so close, but it didn't do it. It's like you're shooting an arrow at like one of those targets, and it's like just a few rings away from the bullseye, and you're like, okay, like that was close, like it could have made it. It had all, the arrow was there, the bow was there, the target was there, and yet, yeah, so unfortunately ending this on a little bit of a sad note because I did not like this too much. I didn't super enjoy this, but I will say, let's focus on a couple of positives. It had a lot of atmosphere. There's a lot of vibes. It feels very like gothic, slow. If you like that sort of thing, or if you like vampire books, you will probably like this, even though again, it's not a vampire book. They're not vampires. I don't know what the fuck they are because they don't explain it. They don't give me anything. I'm left with so many questions, even though they wrap it up so neatly with a bow in other areas. Based on this, I'm not super sure how I feel about rushing in to try to read Year of the Witching. I feel like with as many elements that could have been very dark in this and then weren't, the other one seems even like lighter, like a little more fluffier or softer, which is the opposite of what I think I want. So I'll probably keep that one on my TBR for a little bit longer, I think. If you like lighter, softer things, like if you like the themes of darkness without it going too hard, you will probably love this. So I don't want to dissuade anybody, but I will say that if you're looking for something a little bit darker, this probably is not it. Trying to get a thumbnail, but the books, I'm like so close, and the books are so close, and we're all just so close. We're so close. Okay, so this is it. This is the end of the reading vlog. These are the 5 books that I read for this. They are 5 recent-ish horror and thriller releases. I will briefly go through them again right now along with my ratings after I've taken a little bit of time to sit with them, now that I'm pretty solid on what I'm going with for these. Okay, so to recap, first I read The Weight of Blood, Tiffany D. Jackson. I really liked this one. I think I mentioned how self-referential this was in terms of the inspiration of Carrie and Stephen King and what's inspired this book, but something that I don't think I mentioned and that I thought was really cool was that there was a part where they even mentioned, because of Carrie's powers, they're like, what about pyrokinesis? And somebody looks at the character and they're like, you mean that thing that Stephen King made up in his book? And so they're mentioning a thing as being made up by Stephen King in a book without mentioning at all that Carrie is a thing. Like, they're mentioning like Firestarter and like other references to Stephen King without directly mentioning that Carrie already exists and the similarities, which I just thought was funny and clever. I give this 4.5 stars. I really liked this. It was YA. It felt very dark and very fun. If you like Carrie, you will probably really love this. I will say it's a lot more racially focused, which I enjoyed. There's a lot of important stuff that was said by the characters or in terms of how certain characters are being treated or viewed. Overall, I really liked it. Up next, I read Daisy Darker, which was an adult thriller, and this is my first book by Alice Feeney, and I really liked it. I will say that for the first 100 or 200 pages, I was not sold, as I've mentioned, and that's just because when things start off slow for me, it's really hard for me to start books because I like to get invested immediately, and if it takes a little bit longer for that investment to come, for me to become completely absorbed, it's harder for me. I have really bad ADHD, so it's really hard for me to focus. So if a book doesn't immediately like catch my attention and keep it, it's hard for me to stick to. That said, I am very glad that I pushed through for this because the ending was not something I was expecting. I really, really liked this. And I think I'm going to settle on a 4 for this one. The grandmother was my favorite character in this. I really loved her. Did I read The Resting Place next, or did I read The Last Housewife? I don't remember which came first. I think I read both in the same day or like back to back. So we're gonna go with The Resting Place. This one, the more I think about it, the lower my rating is. So initially I did quite like it. For this one, I also felt like the first 150, 200 pages were a little bit slow. So I did struggle. But by the end of this, I did like that there were so many different things happening. I liked how twisty this was. I understood everything happening, and I liked how many different threads were woven together to complete the story. That said, I did not like the main character at all. I didn't like most of the characters in this at all. I felt like their dialogue was weird. I felt like their reactions were not very believable. And I don't know if that was something that was because this is a translated book, so originally it was in Swedish. I don't know if maybe something in the dialogue was lost between the translation, but for me, it didn't super work. I also just couldn't stand so many of the main characters. Like, the main character's boyfriend, there were just people in here that I did not like. And yeah, I think I'm going to settle on a 2 for this. Maybe 2.5. 2. 2.5? 3? 2.5. We're going to give it a 2.5. I'm really indecisive and I don't like giving like lower ratings, but I'm trying to be better about that this year. Like, I'm trying to be more honest and more thorough with why I either like or do not like something. So having this vlog and having this channel is actually helping with that a lot, and it's pretty fun. So hopefully I will get a little bit better at articulating these things and checking in, but yeah. 2.5. And then on to The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. And as you can see, I actually tabbed, well, can you see that? It's kind of bright. There we go. I tabbed this one up quite a lot. Like, there are a lot of marks in here. This is an adult thriller. It is about a sex cult, and I really liked it. There were certain things that I felt were a little bit convenient. Certain situations that the main character got herself in and out of a little bit too easily that I was like, I feel like that should have been more difficult. But that said, I gave this a 4. I'm gonna settle on a 4 for this. I did really like it. If you are into like darker themes, if you watch Law and Order SVU for fun, I think you would probably be into this. But if those sorts of darker sexual abuse related themes are not things that you feel comfortable reading or, you know, watching or ingesting in media, I might recommend that you either look a little bit into the content warnings for this or avoid it altogether, because it would be really difficult to read this without reading those bits. And then that brings me to the last book, which I've already talked about a little bit, but I am going to settle on a 3 for this. I keep going back and forth on my rating for this one. I think I am going to give it a 2.75, which I know is specific and stupid. And if my boyfriend were not in the shower right now, he would hear me saying this and he would laugh at me and be like, 2.75 point? What? So because I know he's gonna watch this, just to mention, leave me alone. 2.75, solid rating. I've gone back and forth on this one like 4 times. I think I'm going to give it a 2.5. There were a lot of things I liked, but there were more that I didn't, and I was left with questions that I did not want to be left with. So yeah, I think I'm probably not like the super popular opinion holder with this one because I think a lot of people really enjoyed this, but I am what I am, and I want things to be very dark, and I don't want them to have happy endings. Sorry. Alright, so that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this reading vlog. I am slowly but surely getting a little bit more used to talking about and discussing my books. For me, up until now, I don't know, I think I've mentioned this, but for me, up until now, reading has been a very, very private hobby. So I talk about books and like I review them and stuff, but I do it in a sort of clinical way where I kind of remove myself a little bit, and having to vocalize and talk about things on camera like this makes me feel very vulnerable and weird. So I will probably get better at it as I get more comfortable. I really like making these, and I like being able to look back on the things I'm reading and what I thought about them. So I'm going to push through the discomfort and continue, because as we all know, without discomfort, there is no growth. That's your tip for the day. That's your little snippet for the day of positive wisdom or something. Yeah. I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day editing this and getting it up, posted for tomorrow or the next day. And I am actually going to be starting on another vlog. So that one is space horror. And if you're into sci-fi and spooky things, stay tuned. Oh man, did I do that thing again where I forgot to say my name at the beginning of this? It shouldn't be so hard for me to remember to say my name, and yet. And yet. Okay, so I'm Cassie. Thank you for hanging out with me for this reading vlog. Hope you liked it. Please let me know if you read these books, or if you're going to read these books. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. I'd love to talk to you about them. I would love to talk about them to anybody. Also, please do not get mad at me if I did not like a book that you really liked, because we all have different tastes, and that's what's important. And that's why so many books can keep being made. We all have different tastes, and that's a good thing. So be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.